Good afternoon and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art. I'm your host, Linda Scheller. A little bit about me. I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 36 years in the Ceres Unified School District. I'm a writer, and now that I am retired, I have much more time to devote to my poetry, plays, essays. And also, I get to do fun things like this. I'm also a programmer for KCBP Community Radio out of the Modesto Peace Life session. Today, we're so pleased to have Sandra Veneman as our guest. Sandra Veneman is an artist, gallery director, teacher, and the co-owner of the Chartreuse Muse, a professional gallery and art school in downtown Modesto. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a bit about your early artistic experiences and the influences on your artistic development.
Well, my earliest recollection of doing art was in my mother's art studio at home. And she would have called herself a painter, but did a lot of different artwork. And so there were times that as being in her art studio, I would just kind of use the scraps of whatever she had left behind or was, like I've said, dropped on the floor, and I would go ahead and scoop those up and make things from them. But my mom, in addition to painting, she did a lot of different mediums. Growing up as a child, I saw her try all kinds of different things like painting and clay. And I remember her really getting into weaving. She bought a giant loom. Because of the loom and the weaving, she got into spinning her own yarn. And because she was spinning her own yarn, we finally got our own sheep. And so she would take the wool from the sheep and spin the yarn, and she would dye with natural dyes like purple onion skins and lichen and mushrooms and walnut hulls. And so I was exposed to a lot of this at a really, really early age. So probably my biggest mentor and cheerleader was my mother growing up. And I was born down in Southern California. And in junior high, my family moved up to Modesto area, and I didn't have there was no art program at the school I was going to, so my parents put me into private lessons. And so I took private lessons for about 6 years here in Modesto from an artist who's passed away now, who was Viva Porter, a fantastic designer and painter. And she really taught me a lot about color and painting, and I really loved it so much that I really considered myself a painter. In my senior year, she encouraged me to enter a youth show at the Central California Art Association, which was called the Young Masters at the time, and that was 1984. And I won Best of Show, so that kind of started to really push me in the direction of art. But of course, my mother was feeling that also. My mom and dad, I should say, they were both very encouraging to me for that, as well as other people around my life, my grandparents. So after that, I went to college in Grand Rapids, Michigan, to Calvin College, Calvin University now. And as touring the campus before I even went there, I went into the art department with my mother, and we went through each of the studios, and I just loved the painting studio and told my mom that, oh, I am going to love it here. The painting studio is exactly where I want to be. And we continued the tour, and as we went through the ceramic studio, my mom just looked at me and said, "You're going to end up in the ceramic studio." Huh. And after looking at her with crazy eyes and saying, "There's no way I'm going to be doing clay," graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, concentrating in clay. So she kind of knew what I was going to be looking for. And clay is really, I just absolutely love clay.
Did she ever explain how she knew that this was going to be your destiny?
Well, she herself loved clay, and I think she just saw herself also spending time in that studio. But the way the studio was set up and we got to meet the professor, I think my mom just saw that that was going to be a really good fit. And my years in college were fantastic in the art department in the clay studio. I acted as the ceramic assistant for 3 years, mixing the clay, mixing glazes, firing the students' work. And at times when the professor couldn't be there, I would be able to lead critiques with the beginning ceramic students. And I think it kind of put me in the direction of teaching as well. So
I believe you also wrote that you were very strongly influenced by nature. How and when did that happen?
Well, I think probably my love for nature comes from my parents as well. We call Yosemite Valley our second home. We love Yosemite and doing a lot of hiking. But I also, we live right on the Stanislaus River, and growing up, I was able to do a lot of fishing with my siblings, and we climbed through the brambles, and we found all kinds of things, animals and that kind of thing. In fact, it's kind of funny. My family thinks I'm a little bit crazy, but I'm a real forager. And so I have books on edible weeds and wicked plants and all these different kinds of things that I will sometimes pick and bring home for my family to eat. So that's, I think, kind of where my love for nature came from, was probably my mother and exposure with my mom and dad.
That's nice. How has your career as a teacher unfolded?
Well, after graduating from college, I think most artists step out those doors and say, now what do I do? They have to find a job as a waitress, or they're going to go work for an advertising firm or some place that they're going to try to, and do their art on the side. And as I graduated, I realized that what I really wanted to do was to go get a teaching credential. So when I moved home, I went to Stanislaus State, got my teaching credential, and it's the way that my path has been directed in life has just been fantastic, because when I went into the classroom to do my student teaching, I got put with a woman by the name of Chela Gonzalez. I had no idea who that was, but I went ahead and stepped into her classroom, and Chela and I hit it off so well, and I just absolutely adored her. And she also worked with a teacher at Downey High School, Vicki Boise, who became just a lifelong art enthusiast, and I can call her a friend too. And so once Chela left Downey, she opened Johansson, and that left a vacancy at Downey High School, and that was where I stepped in, and I got to teach with Vicki Boise for a while. And then after that, I started having my family, so I stopped teaching for some time on a school level, but I never stopped teaching because I also joined the Central California Art Association while I was doing my teaching with Chela, my student teaching. And as my family grew, I was able to still go and teach in the classroom at the Central California Art Association. And that was when they were in the basement of the McHenry Museum. So that was a long time ago. And as things went, I taught, and I loved it. And yeah, those were great times. I loved doing that.
Please tell us about the history of the Chartreuse Muse.
Well, there are around 2000, there were some changes happening in downtown, as many of you would know, and I was part of the public art committee at the time for the city of Modesto, and it was when the Covell built hotel where our county seat sits now. It's at 10th Street Place. They brought the hotel down and they built the building and put public art. I was very involved at the Central California Art Association at the time. And the Chartreuse Muse was a group of ladies that I had been doing critiques with. And through those couple of years between 2000 and 2002, these ladies wanted to find a space to do some art, they wanted to find a big warehouse type of space. And they wanted to have a little small gallery with it too. So they did find that. They asked me to join at the time, but I already had a wonderful studio at home. So I didn't need to use something that was a warehouse situation, but I told them I would love to be a part of the gallery. And so I went to join with the Chartreuse Muse, became partners with Ellen Rona, who is still my business partner here. And it's been just a great experience. The Chartreuse Muse didn't rise out of a vacuum that we didn't have something happening already in downtown Modesto, but it rose because it was a group of ladies that wanted to do something a little bit different. And so I was really excited to join in that.
At what point did you move to the current building?
So we were in our old location, which was on H Street. If you know anything about H Street in Modesto, it's a straight away from the city of Modesto right to the freeway. So there's not a whole lot of walk-in traffic. So we started looking for a new space and found it in the old Rogers Jewelers building that faces onto 10th, and I Street is kind of the side of the building. We found the building, and my husband and I actually purchased the building so that we could really kind of showcase some beautiful art and draw some great artists into our location. And so that's what we did. And so we moved here in 2007. So we've been going strong since then.
It's the ideal location. It's a very walkable street.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're really glad to be close to where, at the time, the Art Association also moved from the basement of the McHenry Museum over to 10th Street Place. And so that actually kind of has created a little art corridor on 10th Street with having the Gallo Center at one end, Brendan Theater, Misselin Gallery, and then we being in between. It's kind of set up a really nice art space for everybody.
At what point did you add the clay studio at the Muse?
So we added the clay studio about 5 years ago. We started out very slowly. We knew that we needed to kind of work on it slowly. It can be very expensive to start a clay studio. We'd already been teaching clay, but we had an extra classroom that we hadn't utilized yet. So in addition to the front half of our building, which is a professional gallery, we have 2 classrooms in the back. One is downstairs, and we use it more for 2-dimensional, which is drawing and painting. And we had a classroom upstairs that was not being utilized, but what we did was we completely renovated it and put a fully functioning clay studio. So we have 6 wheels up there now, and we have some people that are having a great time enjoying their throwing on the wheel and hand building. And so it's been a fun road for some of those people and us too.
Nice. Could you describe what Mobile Muse is?
Okay, so we have a lot of things going on at the gallery, but in addition to the professional studio and our art school on site and the clay studio, we have what we call Mobile Muse. Mobile Muse is it's a set of classes that we go into schools, and we can teach these classes at different class levels. So first grade, no matter what school we would go into, first grade would have the same clay project that they do. And so we have it all set up, and the lesson plans are all ready to go. We have all of the supplies ready to go. And that's on our student level, but we also do Mobile Muse for adults, for team building, and for mental health. So Mobile Muse, we also have gone into the Kaiser facilities, from Turlock to Stockton and from Sonora to Tracy. And we'll go into those places and have support people and nurses, and we'll have doctors come in and they'll do painting with us or drawing. And they really use it. They've used it in two ways. One, they've used it as kind of a mental health, relaxing time, but they also do it as a mixer and a business, kind of a team building experience for them. So, and they've really enjoyed that.
Oh, that is marvelous. What classes are offered through your art school?
So our art school, we cover sculpture through painting. So our art classes we have for our youngest children is called Art Adventures. And those are all two-dimensional subjects. So they would do printmaking, they can do painting, they can do drawing. And when they do those different things, they're exposed to tempera paint, watercolor paint, oil pastels, chalk pastel, and some other types of painting that we do with them, and printmaking. So they get to do some printmaking as well. And then we have another class for children that's called Creative Clay. And Creative Clay is just what it sounds like. It's all hand-built. And so it meets twice a month. The first time they meet, they build the clay out of raw clay, and it is fired. And the next time they come back, they glaze it, which is putting the color on it, and it's fired, and they can pick it up when they're done with that. We also have wheel throwing, and we have wheel throwing for teens, a teen class, and we have wheel throwing for adults. So that's kind of runs the gamut of our classes. We do, from time to time, do some workshops, and those are always fun to participate into. Earlier,
you were telling me about the emerging artists. Could you go
yes.
to our audience?
So the show that we call Emergence, we do every other year. So every 2 years, we'll have an emerging artist show. And the emerging artist show is really geared for an artist who has never shown before or that we have never shown before. And what this does is it allows somebody to kind of get their foot in the door of a professional gallery space and kind of figure out how that all works. And they have to put a portfolio together, and we take a look at their work and we see if it's a fit for that show. And so we would have had that this summer. Unfortunately, because of our shutdown and what we've had to do, we're going to have to put that off for a couple more years again. We're really disappointed with that because we love having those. Most of the time they're young artists, but we have some people that are retired and go back into drawing or painting, and they want to see if they can show somewhere.
So how else has the pandemic affected the gallery and the classes you offer?
Well, just since we all shut down in the middle of March, which we thought was going to be for 2 weeks, that turned into quite a bit more time, we did have to immediately switch gears and go virtual. And so at the very end of the school year last year, we were teaching all of our classes through Zoom. And so that my business partner, Ellen, is the one who took over doing those Zoom classes so that we ourselves could kind of figure out how those classes were going to work so that we could teach our teachers as well and kind of know what the pitfalls were going to be for using an online way of teaching. We did have to close down just like everybody else. And so obviously, when you close down, the income isn't coming into your store anymore. But if you have a support staff that you can hardly move forward without having them there because there's no income, that's where it becomes very difficult. And so we were able to apply for the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program that many, many small businesses were blessed with. And we truly felt that was a blessing for us because we were able to at least keep our gallery director, and so that she was here and we could still figure out advertising and how we're going to make sure that we are putting ourselves in front of the public and they know that we're still around. And we had to kind of limp along that way through the summer. And so At this point right now, we really have had to cut our hours back. Normally we are open Tuesday through Saturday, and we've cut our hours back now to only Saturdays. And we have applied for a grant that was through the workforce development that Stanislaus County has put together, that we did get awarded the grant. So we were very excited about that. So we're going to be able to move forward and start to open up and have customers be able to come in and, you know, get out of the house even, but see some beautiful artwork, because we still have it here, and we still have artists wanting to bring their work in. And so we're moving in the right direction, but still, you know, everybody's a little scared, and we have to just kind of realize that's life for now.
Before we look at the images, I wanted to call attention to the beautiful piece that is setting in front of you, the green vase. Could you tell us about that? Yes.
So I do a series, and before I even talk about the series, I'm going to show you the size that on the camera right now. The piece looks very large, but I'm really going to pick it up, and it's really just a tiny, weensy little piece. So cameras are backwards. So these pieces that I do, this is one little piece, is called Queen Mab's collection. Queen Mab is Queen of the Fairies in literature, if you know much about her. And if you're, that's just something that has come from climbing through the brambles. And my mom was very whimsical, and so she was a great resource for that too. But I do these small pieces, and I'll put another one up here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is another one. So what I do is I do like to throw on the wheel. It's not mainly what I do. I mainly do hand building, and I'm going to talk about that when we get to our pictures. But the little wheel thrown pieces I do, and then I do ornamentation, some little hand built ornamentation on them.
Oh,
so this one is called aphid. So you can see the tiny body of the pot has been thrown on the wheel, and then I've added the little handles and feet to this one.
That's marvelous.
Thank you. And then I have another one here that might be kind of fun to see too. So here's a lot of these. This is typically what I've done, and they will have a little stopper in them.
Oh my.
So they almost look like a little perfume bottle or something like that.
Oh, that's sweet.
Some of them, I don't have any right now, but some of the little stoppers are even a little, I made some little fairy cocoons where the fairy is sucking its thumb or it's doing something. So it's kind of a little surprise when you pull the stopper out and you get to see what it is.
How nice. Well, let's look at the pictures.
All right. So what you're seeing here is a series that I did about a year ago. These came from, there were a couple of things that people, when I'm doing my artwork, people know I research not just the artwork I'm going to do, but I probably go too far and look up too many things. But a couple of years ago, I did the 23andMe DNA test. And in doing that, I got to find out there were kind of 5 strong areas that my DNA was coming from. And at the same time, I was reading a book about Catherine the Great, and I really got interested in the Romanovs' Fabergé eggs that became so controversial and popular, and they're just so opulent and beautiful. The eggs that you see in front of you right now, they're probably about 11 inches tall to about 13 inches tall, so they're pretty good size. I have one here that's bisque, so you can kind of see I'm going to hold it next to my head, so you can kind of see it's a little bigger than how big my head is, obviously. But so what you're seeing on as the picture right there is one of the eggs that is in its green state, which means it hasn't been fired yet. And the way that I produce this is I have a slab roller, and I roll a slab of clay out. A slab simply means that you're rolling a sheet of clay out. You take the sheet and you can put it over a form. And what I've used to do these eggs are stadium light bulbs. And then I have some very large styrofoam balls, and I make 2 separate sides, almost like 2 bowls, and I put the 2 bowls together, and then I just work it until it's a smooth egg form, and that's what you see here.
Next.
So after it's fired, it's bisque fired, and usually the bisque clay, you can tell it's hard. It's got a firmness to it. It's not going to, you can't carve on it or bend it anymore. And so what you see in front of you here is the bisqued egg. And when I did these, I'm going to show you the finished egg first, but you're going to see what you're seeing right now is how I designed the stained glass window that got put on the top of this egg. And then there's a frieze that goes around the center of the egg. And then there's some artwork on the bottom of the egg that some of you may recognize as the Lascaux cave paintings in southern France. Now, in doing the DNA eggs, French was one of the DNA markers that popped up for me. So one of my DNA eggs, is what I call these, was a French egg. So in order to put the stained glass window on the top of the egg needed to be divided into quarters. Stained glass window is divided into 12 parts. And so I divided the egg into quarters, and I did the whole egg. So now you see what you see on this egg is the graph that goes on the egg so that I can start doing the artwork in proportion. So what I've done here, there's no glaze on the egg yet. I'm simply drawing on the egg with Sharpie and with watercolor markers. The egg is, the bisqued egg is very porous, and it will pull the ink into the clay very easily. So what I'm doing is I'm laying out my design. And so what I'm going to do, what you'll see next is I come along with underglazes, which is a type of glazing. And I'm putting the underglazes now in place.
How does that work, underglazing?
So an underglaze is actually, the base is a white clay with colorant in it. You paint it, you can water it down and use it like watercolors, and you're going to see in a little bit how I used it that way. It can also be laid on and be very opaque, which that's what I did more with what you see with the stained glass. But in order to make the colors vibrant and really be fixed, you will put a clear glaze over the top. And so what you see from right there that you see to right here, upside down. Oops, there's the camera. You can see this has been glazed. So you can see the underglaze in the screen, and then off to the side, you can see the shiny.
Gorgeous.
The next slide, you can see this is the Lascaux cave paintings from southern France. And so what I did in order to get an image, because I'm working not only on a sphere shape, but also in the round, trying to get an image on the bottom. So you're going to see this in a minute, but let me show you just so you know what I'm going to show you next. These are, I tried to put the cave painting in a circular pattern in a dome, which can be a little complex.
Oh, I bet.
So what I did here was, you can see this is kind of my sketch.
Oh.
Using a lot of the Lascaux drawing from the wall. So it's a very rough sketch. So what I did here, this is where I was talking about the underglaze being put on in almost a transparent form. So I just sponge painted so it would look like the cave wall. So now I have a base for the painting going on. And then after that, I went ahead and I painted the cave animals on top. Now this is still on the same egg. The cave painting is on the bottom, and on the top that you see is white there is covered with a clear glaze. That's going to be the shiny. What you're seeing now in front of you is each of, you remember I divided the egg into quadrants. Mm-hmm. So now I did 4 paintings around the sides of the artwork. So if you're taking a look here, I did 4 still lifes. There's this one, this one is what I'm going to be showing you how I did, and this one. So what I did was I came up with my composition with pencil. The X was helping me to get a focal point for that image, and I drew with pencil. So on the next slide, you'll be able to see, I started to apply the underglazes. And this is where my long love and history with underglazes comes in to play, because most of the time when people use underglazes, they're very flat and they're very graphic, meaning they just are very high contrast, but I use them more like a painterly medium. And so I really was mixing and painting with the underglazes. So you can see here, I just slowly built up and built up. And then you'll see, I think, is there another one after this one? Oh, okay, so this is another DNA egg. So the other one was French. This one is Dutch. So I have the Dutch egg here. And so on the top, this is a typical little motif that is called the kissers. And I'm also married to a Dutchman, so I needed to put the boy and the girl on the top. This is on the top of the egg. And this is what it looks like now after it's glazed. Beautiful. And then, of course, since Holland is known for its tulips, I painted the tulips on, and you can see the tulips that are around the bottom of the egg. Oh, that's gorgeous. Thank you. And I did something a little interesting on this egg. I glazed, these are all underglazes still, and I put a gloss glaze on the tulips so that they would really stand forward. And I put a matte glaze. If you go to the next, to the windmill, So you can see that is where I'm laying on the underglazes, but it's not fired yet. Go ahead to the fired colored one there. One more, there we go. So there you can see the tulips that are coming around the plate, and the plate is with a matte glaze. So the tulips kind of can pop forward. That is so beautiful. Thank you. Each egg takes about 100 hours for me to do. So it's extremely time consuming. And I have extremely forgiving family because I'm the main chef in the family. And so when I'm working on projects like this, my family really kicks in and they start to do some cooking too. So nice. So if you there we go. So now if you, these next couple of slides are going to show the other still lives that are on the French egg. I showed food through the middle because my love of culinary definitely came from my French side of the family. My mother was a fabulous cook. My grandmother was a fabulous cook, and my grandmother's aunt and her mother were fabulous cooks. And so it just kind of has run through our family. It had to be part of the DNA egg. So what I wanted to show you, go back to the previous slide for a moment. Oh, maybe one more back. Yeah, okay, this one. If you look up close, I did some trompe-l'oeil, and trompe-l'oeil is the fool the eye, where you can paint very dimensionally. So if you take a look closely at this image, you'll see that the knife handle is actually hanging off the edge of the table a bit. And it's hanging over the Lascaux cave paintings. Oh. And the reason I did Lascaux cave paintings on the bottom and the stained glass window on the top is because I believe in France, the cave paintings are the oldest, best kept cave paintings that have been found in the world. And it's not very far away. And so that's the beginning of art, essentially, if I'm going to put that in my mind. Mm. And on the top of the egg is, for me, the pinnacle of high art is the cathedral and the artwork that went with the cathedral. And so that's why I put the stained glass window on the top. And the stained glass window is comes from Saint Denis, which is Saint Denis, which is the patron saint of France. And so that was significant also. And you'll see the gold fleur-de-lis are in the black triangular, round triangular parts that hang down too. I had to include the cheese board because my family comes from dairy business. That's our main business. Same with the Dutch egg. Each of those Delft plates were all dairy scenes with the windmill. So
Nice.
Lamb and shallots. I think that's the last one.
Have you done eggs for the other 3 parts of your heritage?
So right behind me, I'm going to turn them gently, but one of my DNA markers was Danish, and so I went with a Viking theme on that one. So on this one, you're going to see that I worked on doing a shield wall. And we've got lots of Viking fans out there, I'm sure, that understand shield wall. And then I just kind of did, this is the way that Viking came into my family, was through coming down into Northern Holland, but also Viking came into my British heritage, from Great Britain. So you see the ships, and then around here, I've kind of done what I would call the armband. And the gold is actually, if you think about, the first firing is a bisque firing. The second firing is a glaze firing. And there's a third firing that you can do is called a luster firing. And the luster firing is actually 24 karat gold that is suspended in a liquid that you paint, very transparent, that you paint over the top of a glossy glaze. It works with matte too, but it needs to be over a glaze. And then it's a lower fire, yet still very hot. It's around 1600 degrees. So it's still very hot. But when it comes out, the gold comes to the surface and makes just a fine surface on it.
Oh, that's stunning.
The top image is a Viking compass.
Oh.
And then the very little center part here is actually, most of Scandinavia is Lutheran, so I did a little Lutheran symbol. And all of my eggs have some Christian connotation because that's my heritage. So that is one. Let me put that safely down. I also have Iberian blood, which simply means Basque, Portuguese, and Spanish. And so in saying that, what I did was I decided to go down to southern Spain in my mind, and I studied the Alhambra, and I've been able to visit the Alhambra too. And I've told people, you walk in and it's just, the design is mind-blowing. There's just so much, there's carving. And so I did sandstone carving on the top. Reminiscent to the stained glass window, I felt. And then there's just a lot of opulent tile work. And so this is kind of reminiscent of the tile work that you see here. And then on the bottom, I did mosaic flooring is everywhere in the Alhambra. And so I tried to include that too. So this one is, my hat is off to my Iberian Peninsula blood.
Oh, I love that.
Let's see if I can get to this one. This one is my British Isles. My earliest blood of English lineage, I should say, comes from southern England and immigrated to the United States, which wasn't the United States at the time, in the late 1600s.
Oh my.
So I've had some blood in this country for a very long time. But I have a lot of Celtic heritage that I have fun with too. So you can see I've done a green man on the front. He's a little shiny, so he might be a little hard to see. And then a tree of life, which is pretty universal all through the world. And you see it everywhere. And then it's all done in a kind of a Celtic knot, you can see. And I did a green man on this side with his mouth open and he's wild. And on this side, he's calm and he's more asleep. And that was kind of symbolizing how the British Empire has been explosive around the world, and then they've also receded and they've been calm around the world. And then around the center here, I start with the very first King of England to the last Queen.
Wow.
Elizabeth II. But I've picked out significant crowns or significant monarchs that I felt were significant that go around the center here. And then on the top, I have a Celtic cross, but it's backed with a blood red glaze because of all of the fighting between Protestant and Catholic that has always happened. So I find this is kind of symbolic to be kind of a bloody battle in Great Britain with religion. So that's my 5th DNA egg that I can show you.
Approximately how many hours went into that one?
I would say average, each of these eggs were around 100 hours. So there's just, you saw on the Viking and the Alhambra and the British egg, I did some carving on those before they were bisque fired. So when the clay was green, where I could still carve on it and manipulate it, that's when some of that took place. So that's very time consuming also. And then on the other eggs, the Dutch and the French egg, those were time consuming through just the painting with the underglazes.
They're just gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question. Can you share about the birds in the background?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I love nature, like I've explained already, and I really am very much of a birder. As my family knows, I'm a little bit crazy about it. I hang a myriad bird feeders in our trees in the back of our house, and I just really enjoy birds. And I started doing a show to set up birds, and we were going to be having it during this COVID time. Wow. And so I had to kind of put the bird show on the shelf. And so Ellen and I had been talking about shows in the future, and we really wanted to have kind of a coming out show when we're all able to start moving around. And so we're shooting for June 1 of 2021 to have a show that's going to be called Take Flight. And my part of it is very bird themed, but we have several artists that be joining in, and they're going to be taking that theme and kind of interpreting it the way they want to do. So it doesn't have to necessarily do with something that actually flies, but it will be something that just, we get to open our doors and have a big reception and a great party that we're all still here and creating.
I can't wait. That sounds just marvelous. Is there any way you could show us one?
Yes, let me grab one of those. So this little guy is one of my favorite. What you see behind, he's just a little fat, I don't know, his little expression, it's probably not showing up on camera quite as well as it should. But what you're seeing here is I've done the birds. I have about 30 birds, and I'm not done with completing all of them, but I've been using underglazes on these birds as well. And so these are not complete yet because they don't have the final glaze on that will pull even more color and make them more bright and beautiful. So what you see behind me is that they are mid-process, but I wanted to give kind of a teaser for what we're going to be doing next year. This is another little fun one too.
Oh.
So what I've done was I created about 30 bird bodies, and then I went online and I started studying finding as colorful, beautiful tropical and subtropical birds as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so each of these birds that you see here and behind me actually have a real bird that I'm copying the coloring from. And all of that will be at the show too. You'll see a picture of the real bird that it's being copied.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea.
This one is actually a hoopoe, which is a bird that travels between Italy and Africa. And I've really stylized him, but the coloring on these birds are just fabulous. And they normally have a big crown of feathers. So if you can see on the top, I have some little holes drilled.
Oh, yes.
And I will be mounting feathers in there. So right now I just have one that's kind of showing you an idea of what I'm going to do with the feathers, but nothing is completely attached yet. And I'm still working on how that's all going to work. So, but I want to show you in process what is going to happen.
That is marvelous.
Thank you. And then you probably see there behind this right here in this area.
Yes.
This is all bisqued. These are all bisqueware pieces that we have right now because we're in this COVID time and we're not getting a lot of people coming out. That on Saturday, if people do want to come out, we have tables set up in the back of the gallery that you can choose one of the bisque pieces back here and you can sit and you can glaze it. And so it'd be kind of a creative, fun time to get out. So I wanted to point that out to you too.
Well, I want to do that. I'm so glad you mentioned it. Oh, thank you. This has been delightful. Are you ready for the 10 questions?
Ooh, yeah, here we go.
Okay. Sandy, what sound do you like best?
Oh, I love to hear laughing and giggling and people having a great time. That's my favorite sound.
If you could snap your fingers and be anywhere in space and time, where would you go?
Oh, I think there's probably people shouting this as they watch me talking, but I would want to land right in the middle of the Elizabethan court with a beautiful gown on, and I want to be seeing Queen Elizabeth dancing.
Oh. What's your go-to food?
Italian. Anything Italian.
Please finish this sentence. I frequently dream about.
Oh. Gosh. I do frequently dream about what I'm going to be working on in my artwork. But if I do a strange dream, it's usually some monster that's chasing me and I'm going to put it down in some way. I overtake it. So strange dream.
What's your favorite animal and why?
I think my favorite animal are probably birds. And I just love watching them and listening to them. And it's fun to kind of see that they have little habits. We have birds that come back seasonally like everybody does. We're a great pass-through place for migrating birds. And so I love that seasonal bird change and I just love watching them.
Another one you can finish. My artistic hero is?
Oh my goodness. My mother. My mother passed away about 7 years ago. And it's just been really tough without having my mom.
She must have been so proud of you. So happy to see you become the artist she always knew you were.
Oh, she loved it. She loved it. She loved coming into the gallery here to receptions and having a great time. And we eventually she had a studio space in my studio at home. And I finally got her to do some really great artwork. And she had a fantastic show here about 10 years ago. And I was just so honored to be able to do that and so proud of her. And I'm just really proud of my mom.
What would you like to have more of?
Oh, me. I would love to have a double me so that I could, I have so many ideas that I want to do. I'm constantly working on something and I always feel like I never have enough time. So maybe time, maybe not more me. I want more time.
What color is your soul?
Green. And not necessarily chartreuse. I love green. Any shade of green.
Okay. Is there any sort of like ritual that you observe?
Oh, no, not really. Maybe a habit or something I like to do. I listen to music. Music often gets me kind of motivated for what I'm doing or what artwork I'm going to be working on. So, but ritual, I don't think I really have. I don't know.
Oh, music.
Music. Yes. I love music.
And finally, what gives you hope?
Oh, the Lord gives me hope. I love Jesus, and I think that's everybody's hope. So reading the Bible gives me hope.
I've enjoyed talking with you so much, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed my time with you, Linda. Thank you very much. It's a fantastic experience.
Can't wait to come down to the Chartreuse Muse. Hope to see you there.
Please do. Great. Thank you.